This is a story about apple dumplings. There was once an old woman who had a taste for homemade apple dumplings. The only problem was she only had pears. So she decided to go for a walk to see if somewhere in the world she could come across apples to make her dumplings with. But before she left her house, the old woman looked around at all the extra pears she had. She thought to herself, if I have a taste for apple dumplings, maybe there's someone somewhere in the world who has a taste for pears. And so the old woman collected up all those extra pears. She put them in her basket. She turned, left her house, and started on her walk. And she was walking, and before long, she came across a farmer who was out in her farmyard taking care of her goose. The old lady and the farmer, they got to talking. And not long into the conversation, they realized that the farmer loved homemade pear tarts, but didn't have any pears to make the recipe with. And so, without a second thought, the old woman gave the farmer all of the pears in her basket. And the farmer was so thankful that in exchange, she gave the old woman a basket full of soft, downy goose feathers. Well, the old woman said thank you. She turned and she continued on her walk. And she was walking, and before long, she came across a big garden, a garden full of beautiful flowers, all different kinds of flowers. But in the middle of that garden was a husband and wife, and they were fighting with each other. The wife was saying, "We should stuff my father's chair with soft cotton padding." And the husband was saying, "We should stuff your father's chair with straw stuffing." Well, the old woman hated to see this couple arguing. And so she went and she offered them her basket full of soft, feathery goose down. And the husband and wife were so thankful to have the feathers that in exchange, they gave the old woman a gorgeous bouquet of flowers from the garden. The old woman said thank you. She took the big, beautiful bouquet of flowers in her hands. She turned and she continued on her walk. And she was walking, and before long, the old woman came across a young man who was sitting on the side of the road with his head in his hands. He looked very distraught. And so the old woman asked what was wrong. The young man looked up and told her his story. You see, he was on his way to visit his love, but he had forgotten the ring, and so now he had nothing to give her. Well, the old woman hated to see this young man so distraught, and so without a second thought, she handed him the gorgeous bouquet of flowers that she had in her hands. Well, the young man was so excited. He was so thankful to have this big bouquet of beautiful flowers to give to his love. He was so excited, in fact, that in exchange, he gave the old woman the beautiful gold necklace that he had around his neck. The old woman said thank you. She took the necklace in her hands. She turned and she continued her walk. And she was walking, and before long, she came across a little house. And sitting out in front of that house was a mama and her two kids, and they were crying. And so the old woman went up to the mama and asked what was wrong. The mama explained that her and her kids didn't have very much money, and so they hadn't eaten in quite some time. They were very hungry. The old woman, without a second thought, she looked at that beautiful gold necklace in her hands, and she thought to herself, what are my riches worth if my neighbors are going hungry? And so she gave the mama the beautiful gold necklace. And the mama was so happy. She was so thankful now she could take that necklace to market and buy herself and her kids everything that they needed. The mama and her two kids were so thankful that in exchange they gave the old woman the best gift that they could think of, their puppy. So the old woman scooped the puppy into her arms. She said thank you. She turned and she continued her walk. And she was walking and she was walking. She was patting the dog's head. And suddenly she looked up and saw, growing on the side of the road, an apple tree. And just beyond that apple tree, she saw a little house with a front porch. And so she decided to go and ask if she could pick some apples to make her dumplings with. When she knocked on the door, an old man answered. And after hearing the old woman's story, the old man said, "Why, yes, you can pick as many apples as you want. And if you'd like, maybe we can share an apple together here on the porch. The company sure would be nice." Well, the old woman thought that this sounded like a splendid idea. And so the old woman, the old man, and the little dog went back over to the apple tree, and they picked 3 apples. An apple for the old woman, an apple for the old man, and an apple for the little dog. And then they went back up onto the porch, and they sat and they ate their apple snack together. And every day after that, for the rest of their lives, the old woman, the old man, and the little dog enjoyed homemade apple dumplings together on the porch. The end.